This former WWE superstar was best known as villainous heel Muhammad Hassan. He was featured on the popular Dark Side of the Ring series in Season 6. Straight Outta Jersey welcomes Marc Copani.
All right, guys, I'm Joe Zapata. You know who I am, and I'm honored to have my next guest. He played one of the best heels around, Marc Copani. How you doing, Marc?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you for coming, man. You look great, man. You still working out?
I work out probably more than I did when I was wrestling. I have to. Like, the older I got, the more I needed to do cardio and work out and eat right to stay in shape. It's like, your metabolism slows down and plagued by injuries. So, yeah, no, I work out 6 days a week at least.
Wow. Do you feel how the bump from taking all those bumps? You still feel okay?
I'm in a much better spot than a lot of guys. Yeah. I have my issues. A lot of them are nagging. A lot of them are also because I'm 45 years old. I still run probably 10 to 15 miles a week, and I work out with weights 5 or 6 times a week. I'm learning how to kind of scale back a little. It's been kind of tricky. Like, I've been trying to lower the weight, increase the reps, and kind of be more deliberate with the movement, just so I'm not putting so much pressure on my joints. But yeah, no, I feel them. I feel them, but I feel like I got really lucky compared to some guys who've been doing it for 15, 20 years. I can't imagine how they get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. I mean, you were jacked as a wrestler. I mean, you must have worked out a lot and everything. Did you follow a steady diet? How was that training on the road?
The road is difficult. When I was in college, I started recording everything I ate. So I would wait and write down everything. And I did it by hand back then. So I had a notebook and I write down, I pretty much the same thing, which I still do, breakfast and all my meals. And then I calculate at the end of the day how many carbs, protein, fat, how many calories, and I do it for the end of the week. And then I'd see if I gained weight, lost weight. Like, I was very into the science of it. Now I use MyFitnessPal. So I do the same thing. Like, I'm mentally trained where I don't feel comfortable unless I'm recording what I'm eating and even drinking. Like, when I have alcohol, I always put that in as well. But I can eye a plate of food and tell you pretty close what it weighs and how many calories are in it. So on the road, it's different because you're eating, you have to eat at restaurants, and you can still do it, but you can't train like you would if you were home. I mean, you don't have a lot of time, and you're moving from place to place, and you're not comfortable with the gym and the equipment. So, now that I'm settled in one place and my gym is like 2 minutes away, it's really easy for me to kind of get back into fitness, which I have been probably for the last 5 years. I got really serious about my fitness. Started doing cardio, which I hated. I used to always say I hated cardio. I'll never do cardio. I played basketball, and that was kind of how I got my cardio in. But now I do cardio every day. I mean, I do sometimes twice a day just because I know I need it in order to stay in shape. Yeah, I did it twice. I did it in the morning today, and then when I got home from work, I did a quick 30-minute walk. Nothing too strenuous, just trying to make sure that, I'm not putting too much stress on my ankles and my knees, but at the same time, I'm burning a ton of calories for the day. I always want to be in a deficit.
Yeah, wow. You look great, man. Now, you're obviously from the area, Syracuse and everything. I have a lot of friends in the area up there by you. My cousins went to college in Syracuse. Did you grow up a wrestling fan?
I did. I grew up a huge wrestling fan. My father took me to a show at the Civic Center, and I was probably like 7 years old, and I kind of fell in love with it. I remember watching WrestleMania 3. I've told the story before, but I would, my neighbor, and I lived in the city. So we had a busy city intersection. And I remember my mom walked me there. We crossed the street. I watched WrestleMania 3, and I'll never forget it. It's like it was yesterday. And there's very few things I can remember from that period of my life. I was so young. But I remember WrestleMania 3, and I remember afterwards I went to a payphone outside my friend's house and called my mother, and she come pick me up. She came down and she got me. But I used to watch wrestling, and my cousins and my brother and I used to put on wrestling matches in our basement. We'd have our parents and our friends come down, our family friends, and I watched it all the way up until probably about 8th or 9th grade. And then I got into football and basketball and working out, and I kind of stopped. It wasn't until I got to college where one of my roommates was a huge wrestling fan that I started watching. And then I moved in with another one of my, another friend of mine who's from Syracuse, and he is a huge wrestling fan. And he got me into all the old tapes, old WCW tapes. This was during the WCW, WWE Monday Night Wars. But I started watching old film, Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, and that was kind of when I was like, well, this is awesome. And then it kind of became like I want to do this. I think I can do this. And that was when I started to dedicate my energy and my time to finding a way to get into wrestling permanently, professionally.
So where did you start training and said, hey, I'm going to do this? Where did you go? OVW?
OVW was the first. I moved down to OVW when I was 21 years old. I was a junior in college. I remember I wanted to switch majors, and I met with my academic advisor, and they told me if I were going to switch majors, I'd have a whole other year of college. And I just wasn't into college. College, I was always a good student, but it just wasn't something that interested me. And so I ended up moving to Louisville. I did enroll in the University of Louisville for a semester. I didn't do very well, but I started in the OVW Saturday class, which I read about online. And it's funny whenever I say that, because online internet was just becoming huge. Like when I was in a college dorm, there wasn't online. We had some network connection where we could kind of steal music from each other and probably X-rated videos in college. But moved down to Louisville, started the Saturday class. Most people were older guys and girls, women with regular jobs who were just kind of looking to live out their fantasy. But there were a few of us who actually were younger, athletic. And so they invited us to Tuesday night class, which wasn't really a class. It was basically you come and get the shit beat out of you by Brock Lesnar and John Cena and Shelton Benjamin and all of these guys that were training in the WWE. It was probably 6 to 8 months after that we got invited to participate in the daily class. And that was the class that like Randy and Brock and John, they were in every single day. And so they invited us to participate up there. And so I was the only guy without a contract. So everybody else is there getting paid. They get done with their day. They go home, they ice, they relax, they work out. I worked at Chili's, and that's how I paid the bills. So I would get done with the daily class, which was like 6-7 hours a day. And then I go to the gym, and then I go right to work. And I'd work at Chili's, at night shift. And that's how I made, money. That's how I paid the bills. So I didn't even get a piece of furniture until I shattered my ankle when I was wrestling against Sean O'Hare. And my father, who, not that he disagreed, but it was kind of like, well, you're on your own now if this is what you want to do. He took pity on me, and he bought me a recliner after I broke my ankle. So he had a recliner delivered to my apartment. We had no furniture in Clarksville, Indiana. And that was the first piece of furniture I think I owned outside of, whatever the dorm rooms had when I was in college.
Wow. So when did you get that call to get to WWE?
So I got picked up on a contract a few months prior. This is when they started taking everybody up. And, OVW was the major feeding ground for the WWE at the time. And so Brock was gone, Randy was gone, John was gone, Shelton was gone, Dave was gone. They took Rob Conway, Nick Dinsmore, a couple other guys, Rene Dupree, all these guys that had been down there kind of, taking up time on the show were no longer there. So they had to call some of the younger guys up just so they could put together a decent TV program. And so when I started working on the show, I went from being a jobber, basically getting the crap beat out of me every week, to being part of a group called the Revolution, which Doug Basham and Damaja, Danny Holly, and a couple other people. And so once I started doing that and cutting promos and working more in the ring and getting more experience and working on the house shows on the weekend, I got a contract for, I think it was $750 a week, which is pretty big back then. That was like a lot of money back then. And I'll never forget the call. I was at my apartment. We all lived at the time in Louisville, Kentucky, and a lot of us lived in the same complex. Me, Matt Morgan. I lived with Johnny Jeter, who had a short stint with the Spirit Squad. Mickey James. We all had Shad Beast, Gaspard. We all lived, and we kind of hung out and worked out together. And I got that call, and we celebrated like crazy that night. And so that's how it started. And so I was now officially a developmental talent. It wasn't until a little bit later where we got the call where they're like, well, we're going to make him an Arab. That came a few months after that.
Yeah. Who came up with that, making you're Italian? It reminds you of Chief Jay Strongbow. He was Italian, and then they made him an Indian. Why did they, pick you to become that character, and who came up with that character?
That was Vince's idea. And so Vince was the one who called Jimmy and kind of gave him the idea. Jimmy kind of, he kind of made it really funny in Dark Side of the Ring. He's like, he's Italian from Syracuse, but I had the dark complexion. I had a little bit of a light beard, which could easily be, thickened. I could cut a promo. I was serviceable in the ring. I was decent. I think they saw Sean Davari, and they wanted to put somebody with him. I know Sean was really young and he was on the Indies at the time, but I think that Vince had this idea for this major Arab heel. When they first presented to Jimmy, it wasn't an Arab American character. It was an Arab character. And I remember when I first started, working with the WWE and the producers and the agents there, we weren't really sure if they wanted me to do an accent, which felt I can't, I'm not a classically trained actor. I can't do an Arab accent. It sounded awful. It wasn't until we got up to the house shows where we started playing around in the ring where we really discovered, and it was when we finally filmed the vignettes in Connecticut, where it was solidified that I wasn't an Arab, I was an Arab American. And that brought a whole nother layer of heat, because a lot of the heels that were working, as foreign heels during the WWE in the last 50 years were, with the exception of Sergeant Slaughter, foreign heels from other countries.
Correct.
This became more real, I think, because it was almost like a terror cell, like, in the sense that I'm home, I'm from America, and I have these feelings against Americans. And I think that made the character feel a lot more realistic and really dangerous.
Yeah. How did you get along with Vince McMahon?
I never had a bad interaction with Vince. People could say what they want, and I'm not saying, Vince is not without his flaws. As far as my experience with Vince, he was always very good to me. He was always very kind and civil, and he was always very helpful as far as, developing my in-the-ring persona and my promos, and, kind of giving me guidance. He pushed us. And I know this character was his baby. So I think when this character ultimately failed, I feel like Vince almost took it personally. So I know he did an interview not too long after where he made some comment like, the reason why we pulled the character off of TV is because of the person playing the character, which everybody knew was, but what is he going to say? Like, I buckled to sponsors and I buckled to, he's never going to say that. So I think he took it personally, but as far as our interactions, I always respected him, and I always thought that he was very helpful and kind. And, like I said, I never really had a bad interaction with him.
Oh, wow. Then you were partnered up with Sean as your manager, and that was really great, and you had a lot of heat on you. How are you and Sean relationship? You guys were great, right? Together? No problem?
Yeah. I don't see Sean as often as I'd like. We talk on the phone every once in a while. We text. He likes to send those voice recorded messages, which drive me nuts. I'd rather just read it. But he's really big on those. But Sean and I got, like I've always said, that there would never have been a Hassan character without Sean Daivari. Sean really made the character. Sean was the driving force behind the heat that we got. When Sean started speaking Farsi, no matter how much heat I had, it was typically overshadowed by the heat that he generated. And a lot of the feelings that came up for us, especially me, because I never had genuinely experienced the prejudice, was because of what I saw Sean go through, because of the things I saw. Every time we went to an airport, Sean got stopped. Like, it wasn't a random search. It was a very targeted and deliberate search. And so Sean was much more talented as far as wrestling than I was. And Sean had a better head on his shoulders as far as the business back then than I did. And so without Sean, I don't think it would have lasted a month. And like I said, he's on the road now. He's a producer, and we hooked up in Philly when they were in Philly, and I did WrestleCon last year. And I really only did it because I wanted to go hang out with Sean, and we did. We hung out. We had way too much fun the night before I had to do a signing. So, yeah. But
cool.
Sean's great, man. He was in town a couple of years ago for Easter, and he came over to my family's house, him and Jamie Noble, and they ate dinner with us. Like, I love Sean. Like, I wish he lived here so I can hang out with him every day.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, wrestling fans are very passionate. They could be a little bit crazy. When you were out in public as that character, even though you weren't, just walking through the airport, did they threaten you or get crazy with you because of who the character you played?
Not necessarily in the United States. It's funny because I was just having this conversation today with a couple of coworkers, and we were talking about a completely different kind of situation, but the kind of, we're talking about people who will start an argument or troll you just because they want a response. And it's funny that, you mentioned that, because I recall several times walking into the arena and people saying very hateful and awful things to me. And then as soon as you kind of look at them, you're like, what's up, man? Like, hey, what's up? Like, they just try to get your attention. I think one of the things that I started to feel concerned about, or I didn't really like, was the things that were being said as we were wrestling and as we were walking to the ring. They became very racially generated and motivated, and they became very not boo, you're a bad guy, but boo, you're an Arab. And so those were negative, and those were things that kind of made me start to question, how realistic is this character, and how are people seeing this character? And is this character doing damage as opposed to doing good for Arabs in the United States? I think that was one of the things that really bothered me as we kind of got into the character and it started to change from an Arab American to more of a fundamentalist Muslim. Is this character legitimate anymore? Is it doing good? Is it bringing light to the prejudice and the awful things happening, or is it helping it? Is it making it worse?
Yeah, you're right. You were in the ring with some heavy hitters. I mean, Undertaker, Hogan, John Cena, Shawn Michaels. I mean, out of those guys, who was your favorite to kind of get in the ring with?
Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was one of my favorites just because he was so good. He had so much. He just was able to generate so much sympathy from the crowd that they really want to see him come back and beat the crap out of me. And that's what you want in a good babyface. Shawn, Chris Jericho, like I've wrestled a lot of amazing and talented wrestlers, and Shawn wasn't even in his prime when I was wrestling him, but he was so instinctive. It's just intuitive being in the ring with him because he always knew where to place himself for that next move. And he didn't really have to think. And as a heel, you're supposed to be the one calling a match. Now, when you're working with Shawn Michaels and you're me, you're calling the match, but you're calling it under Shawn's guidance. And Shawn would really dictate the tone and the pace of the match based on how he fed and how he sold. And it was just such an easy day when you're working Shawn. Same with Chris. I did an interview with Chris Jericho not too long ago, and I told him, I always say the two of you are my favorite to work. Not that, I didn't enjoy working everybody else, but it was because they were relatively my size. We could move well in the ring. And they were just so easy because they knew where to move, what to do. You didn't really have to say anything to them. They were just already there and doing it. You're like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to throw him across ropes and hit an elbow. Oh, he's in the corner now. Yeah, you're right. That's a great idea. I'm going to go start punching him. It was just a lot of fun and to be in the ring with someone who was that over and just so talented.
Wow. Everyone that I talked to, all my friends are like, they loved your character and were like, we wish they did more with that character. Did you ever get heat in the locker room with that hair? Because you were so over as a heel, like just everyone hated you. Did you get heat in the locker room?
Got a ton of heat in the locker room. It was a different locker room back then. It depends on who you talk to. And working with Steve Fall from 10 Count Media, he's kind of uncovered some quotes, which every time I see him, he sends me notes, and we do this podcast every week now. And it's been a lot of fun, but he'll send me notes and I'll read the notes. And it's like, oh, I never knew they thought that. Like one, John Cena, Dave Bautista, Tommy Dreamer all had very positive things to say about how, the heat situation was really overblown. It was, an unfair situation for me to be in based on what was happening outside of the wrestling world that affected my career in the wrestling world. And it's always really cool to hear that. But I had heat. Everybody had heat back then. I don't know if you know Mike Mondo. He's a wrestler out of New York, and he worked WWE for a while. And he's like the nicest guy in the world. And I remember hearing about how Mike Mondo had heat. And I was like, well, if Mike Mondo has heat, then anybody in this world is going to have heat right now. But coming in with a gimmick that was super hot, getting pushed to the moon, none of the top guys ever treated me like anything other than a partner who was going to help them make money. It was some of the guys who had been there for a while who really weren't getting the push that they felt they deserved, that saw this young green kid come up and getting a push, but rightfully so, because I was getting heat from the crowd. And I got some shit from them. The same guys who gave shit to pretty much everybody. But it was always the top guys that were like, fuck them. They're not making money, and that's why they're not getting a push.
Yeah. I saw your episode of Dark Side of the Ring, which was great. I was a little bit, normally those episodes end with tragic, where someone dies, overdoses, goes to jail. But you had a great story how it ended, very emotional and everything. Were you hesitant to do that?
Yeah, they I wouldn't do it. I did interview Chris Van Vliet in Philly, that WrestleMania at the restaurant I was just talking about. And he said that. He's like, I'd love to see you on Dark Side. I'm like, absolutely not. I mean, it always ends poorly for the subject of Dark Side of the Ring. So they called me. And they started pitching me the idea, and it took a couple phone calls, and they're great people. It was such a pleasure working with everybody in that organization. And I still talk to some of them today. Like, it was just such a pleasure. Yeah. And they really took care of me, and they really did a nice job of tying everything together. They brought people in that I had no idea had a side to my story. So it was really nice to see them tie it together with what was happening in the world. But, when they first came to me, at one point, I actually hung up the phone, not like a dick, but I was like, you know what? I'm not doing it. We're done. And Tara Hughes, who's one of the producers there, she texted me and she called me, and she was super nice, super kind. And she ended up convinced me that they don't want to make another tragedy, that they've made plenty of tragedies. They're like, we want to make a story about someone who actually had success after wrestling, because you don't see that really ever. So there's plenty of guys, but the trajectory of my career and then the ultimate fall, that's a lot of trauma for somebody to really overcome. And a lot of people get stuck in wanting to continue to be, I'm going to make it back to the WWE. I'm going to do it. And so she convinced me that this wasn't going to be a hit, the hit story. This was going to be a very genuine story about you, your career, and what you did after the career. And that was what convinced me, is I didn't want to just talk about wrestling. I really wanted to show that in spite of what happened, not just me, but other wrestlers, we can turn it around and we can be successful in other fields.
Yep. And you now are a director at Fulton County School District, correct?
Fulton City School District. I'm the director of human resources. Yep. I was a principal there and I was assistant principal there. I taught for a number of years in a neighboring school district. So in my position, it's called the superintendent's team. They're the team of administrators that their central administration. We run the district, and in my position, I'm on that team. So I have a big hand in running that school district with 3,000 students, 720 employees. Wow. So it's a big responsibility, and I really love what I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, it really took a little bit of time, but eventually I was able to pivot, find something that I love, and find my passion again, and kind of pour it all into what I'm doing.
Wow. I was good friends with Tito Santana, and he was a teacher also over here in Jersey until he retired. And I don't know if this happens with you. Obviously, maybe the students' parents back to school, whatever it is, they want to take pictures and autographs with you. And you get that kind of, what do your kids think of it?
At first, I was hesitant. When I first started when I started teaching, I didn't look like I did now. Like I stopped working out. Like I went through a pretty rough phase in my life. And, when I started to get back into it, I had actually gotten married. I had a kid, so I didn't have the time to really dedicate. So physically, people didn't really look at me and be like, this guy used to be a wrestler. But they knew who I was, and it was never an issue. And as I started to become more confident in my new career, I'm not going to sit there and, sign autographs at, high school. But if someone wants to take a picture of me, I'm not going to say no. If they want me to sign something, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to shy away from it at this point. And I've been doing a lot more interviews, as I'm sure people who are watching know, because I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. I have a district who supports me. I have a superintendent. I have a team. I have a board of education who support what I did, and they're proud of what I did. And it's never really a question now of, well, this guy is just a wrestler. Like, how could he be in education? I mean, I've had almost 15 years total in education. So I've proven, and I've steadily worked my way up. So I'm much more confident, and I enjoy it. And if it breaks the ice with a family, which it does, or with a tough kid, or with a tough family or tough parents who are struggling to really feel assimilated and welcomed by the school, then by all means, I'm going to use it to the best of my advantage to help that kid. And that's really all it's been, as an asset for me in the last 15 years.
Yeah, you're very passionate about the teaching and everything. What are your daughter? You have 3 daughters, I believe, right? Your beautiful daughter and one son. What do they think about your past? I mean, it's pretty cool with that.
Yeah, I think right now, after we had a watch party at one of my friends' bars for Dark Side, and they didn't. One of them came, the oldest one came, the other 3 didn't, but they're too young. But we watched it together as a family, and I think they think it's cool because they're so into social media. My son has his own YouTube channel. He makes videos that get like 100,000 views sometimes. I have no idea what he's doing. It makes me a little nervous. But
what's his channel? We got to give it a shout out to people watching.
It's Sam_sports, I believe, or Sam Loves Sports is what you search on YouTube to find it. But he does like top 10 videos, and he's wicked into sports, and people watch. But they'll see like me doing a podcast, like they're upstairs right now, and I can't see them, and I'm sure they're poking their head down the stairs, kind of watching. They think that's cool. The wrestling part, I think it took a little bit for them to really understand because I'm not going to walk around and be like, hey, I was Muhammad Hassan in 2004, and now I'm your father. It took them a little bit to really understand the impact that character had. But, there have been several times where we've been out like at Wegmans, which is a grocery store here, or the mall, or, someplace, and someone's like, oh my God, you're Muhammad Hassan. And they get a real kick out of that some random stranger recognizes me, especially since I got an education, because I've done some things locally for the newspapers and TV shows here. And so people will recognize me now. So they get a kick out of it. But it's nothing that I want them to dwell on or focus on. I'm their father. That's my number one priority, no matter what any of this is. And that's how I want them to look at me. So it's an added bonus that once in a while I get to be cool, and they think it's cool. But, every other time I'm their dad. I'm here for them.
I know you love teaching and everything you do. Would you ever consider returning to WWE if they made an offer?
Like a one-time deal. If I didn't, I could never go back as Muhammad Hassan. That's the thing. Like for WWE and for me, I'm the director of human resources. They would be pretty expensive, and I probably wouldn't have a job the next day. And they would never bring that character back just because of the way that character ended, and really how they had to change their programming after that character. But any sort of one-time deal, of course, it'd be awesome. It'd be great to be out there in front of a crowd. It'd be great to be backstage. It'd be great to see some of my friends who are still back there. But but I would never even consider any sort of permanent return to. I'm 45 years old, man. I would break every bone in my body within a week. I'd be in a full body cast in a wheelchair, in traction somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Do you watch it at all? Do you watch it here and there?
Since it's been on Netflix, I've been watching it. Not a ton, but if I can't sleep or if I'm just up hanging out by myself and everyone's in bed, I'll throw it on. And I've been watching. I probably watched 3 episodes in the last couple of weeks. Just to kind of check in on it. It's a cool program. I mean, it is. The one thing that I was really impressed with, and I worked with some of the pioneers in women's wrestling, Mickie James, Victoria, Trish Stratus when I first got there. But it's really cool to see the development of the women's wrestling game. Like it's really cool to see the development of not the athleticism, but just the matches. Like they're not gimmick matches; they're real wrestling matches. Like they're not bra and panties matches; they're out there wrestling. And I thought that was really cool that WWE finally kind of caught up with the times and realized that women could be just as athletic and just as entertaining and work just as great of a match as any man could. So I thought that was really cool. But a lot of the young talent, I'm super impressed with. Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, just really impressed with their ability to capture and engage a crowd, and then their ability to wrestle and their toughness. So I mean, it was. I wish I had the opportunity to work with some of those guys, but at this point, like I said, I'm just too old.
Yeah. Who is your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers? Who would you think you put up there?
The Rock is number one for me.
Okay, The Rock.
Huge Rock fan. Always will be. The Undertaker's up there.
Okay.
Oh, Triple H is up there.
Okay.
It's been a huge Triple H. And you could tell the era that I watched wrestling, right? God, it's so hard to just name 4. Like as soon as we're done here, I'm like, shoot, I should have sent this guy. I gotta put Shawn Michaels up there. He carried that company through the dark ages, and they came out on the other end because of what he did and how he was able to hold it together for the company. I mean, but then I would have 6 Mount Rushmores. Then I would go back another 10 years, Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair. Fast forward another 10 years, Edge. Like there's just Randy Orton, John Cena, Dave Bautista. Like these are. That Mount Rushmore thing it's kind of like who's the greatest basketball player of all time. Like it's so subjective, but that would be my 4 based on the era that really got me back into wrestling that I really loved and fell in love with wrestling again.
Would you be opposed if any of your kids wanted to get into wrestling business?
Not anymore. No.
Okay.
It's different. And I talked to Sean about that. It's a different locker room. They're a lot more responsive to the needs of the wrestlers, medically, physically, emotionally. It's a tough business. And it's physically tough, but it's emotionally tough. And so I'm not anymore because I feel like it's just so different than when prior to me getting there. And then when I was there, it was like started to change with the wellness policy a couple of years later. And I think, like I said, they are much better to the workers than they were. So no, I wouldn't be. I don't know if they ever would. I could see my daughters before my son. He's just basketball all day. But no, I'd be supportive of that.
Okay. I was going to ask you about teaching and everything and what you do at the school. When COVID hit us, it was a big thing. Did you think we faced a lot of challenges post-COVID with everything that went on in the school district?
Oh God, we're still feeling the ripple effect of COVID. We knew it would be 5 to 10 years to really adjust. What we see with COVID are, just this level of detachment and isolation that has persisted since we reintegrated after COVID. I was a principal during COVID and we had to shut down, and it was very difficult to keep the school running, to become fully digital, electronic, and virtual. Hybrid schedules we ran for a few years after. The effect that I see from COVID is really on our younger students. Have just a lot less awareness of social norms and how to interact with each other and adults. And I think a lot of it is because their parents are so young, and during a very key, development in their parents, whether their parents were basically, it was 5 years ago, some of the parents were adolescents at the time. They did not have access to the same social situations that we have, really had for the last 100 years. And so we've had a lot of issues, and I would say that I think for the next 3 or 4 years, they're going to persist, but we've also found a lot of ways to overcome and work through them. And we're making gains, but we were in my school district, which is a social economic disadvantaged district. We were making huge gains educationally and academically up until COVID, and then COVID hit and it set us back like 10 years. And then, once we reintegrated to a full normal day, a lot of the social issues that started to really become prevalent have really plagued us for the last couple of years. But COVID was a game changer in education, and it continues to be. It affects attendance, it affects behavior, and it affects a student's ability to learn. So I hope we're through the worst of it, but I think it'll still be another couple of years before we feel like we're baseline to where we were in 2019.
Wow, I think so. You do a great podcast, 10 Count Media, with Steve Fall. I want to give him a shout out because he hooked us up. He's a great guy. Like I said, when does that drop? That podcast? Do you know?
No, I don't know. Steve is the one who's in charge of everything. I'm just the pretty face of the operation. He just gets me on there and lets me start talking. I think it's out on Tuesdays. I think that he drops it on Tuesdays. But I'll tell you what, Steve's great, and it's been a ton of fun because we just explore different topics. I've done a handful of interviews. I haven't done a ton, and I just started doing a lot more because I really actually enjoy them now. Whereas before I wasn't as comfortable talking about everything, but we get to talk about all kinds of things like Shawn Michaels, and we got one with with John Cena coming out, and Dave Bautista, and things that I never really got to talk about because everyone just wants to talk about the controversy and the fall of the character. And so it's really cool, and I do enjoy doing them, and we're going to continue to do them. So it's on 10 Count Media. You can find it on YouTube, clips on Instagram if you follow 10 Count Media. But it's a lot of fun, so I hope you guys check it out.
Now there's a WrestleCon coming here in Newark soon. I mean, do you do any appearances or anything?
I'm starting to do more. I'm doing a few. I got them lined up. I'd love to come to New Jersey. I'd love to go to WrestleCon, New Jersey. So if anybody knows who's booking, have them give me a call or hit me up.
I think I do. So I can give you off the call. I'll give you something.
You can email me. It's marc.copani1@gmail. But I'm doing more. I'm doing one in Syracuse. I'm doing one in North Carolina. I got a couple coming up in the Pittsburgh area. At the end of August, I'm in the New York City area. It's a great way to kind of get out there and re-engage with people. I'm also working on a couple of books. And so once I get those all set and published, I'd like to start doing a lot more of these appearances and some public speaking engagements just to not only promote the book, but I feel like the story of having your dreams crushed and ripped out from under you and still finding a way to go on is so important for a lot of people. And not that I have any sage-like advice, but I've been through it, and I came out on the other end, and I think a lot of people need to hear that they can do it as well. So I'm working really hard to kind of put that into words. And once I do, I'd like to come out, and I'll be all over the place, New Jersey, West Coast, Midwest, South, just kind of trying to promote that and trying to spread that word and hopefully help some people. That's what I like to do, man. After wrestling, that became a huge part of me coming back to life. Was if I'm going to do anything for the rest of my life, it's going to be to help people. And that's what I've dedicated myself to for the last 20 years.
Yeah. No regrets about wrestling or anything? No regrets?
No, I wish I would have accomplished more. I wish we had the opportunity to work more. I don't think that character would have lasted much longer, regardless of the bombing. I don't think so. Looking back on it now, I don't have any regrets that I wish it would have happened any differently because I wouldn't be where I am right now. And this is where I'm supposed to be. And that's I'm convinced of.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Marc, for everything. I don't want to take too much of your time. Be respectful of that. Thanks, Steve from 10 Count Media. Thank you for your time. You're great. I hope you do come out here to Jersey so we can meet up and, grab something to eat.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime.
Thank you so much, Marc. I'll talk to you later, brother.
All right. Take it easy.
You got it, man.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.